Australia has had some dark stories throughout its history. Today we're going to be looking at a particularly disturbing case. Today we're going to be focusing on Katherine King and the murder of John Price. Hi, I'm popeyJN. This is Behind the Crime. Before we dive into this story, I just want to make it clear and remind everyone that these are real people that we're talking about, so please keep the comments down below respectful and kind. I also just want to point out I'm only reporting on things that have been made public record. Katherine King was born on October 24th, 1955 in Tenterfield, New South Wales. Katherine's early life was unfortunately very dysfunctional. Katherine's mother Barbara was married to a man named John, and they lived in Aberdeen, New South Wales, where they raised 4 sons. However, Barbara would go on to have an affair with a man named Kenneth Knight, who was Katherine's birth father. After the backlash received by the town for the affair, Kenneth and Barbara moved away, but their relationship was not harmonious by any stretch of the imagination. Kenneth was a violent alcoholic who would rape Barbara upwards of 10 times a day and was verbally abusive towards her and the children. What is particularly heartbreaking about this dynamic is that Katherine's mother would confide directly in Katherine in gruesome detail about these unconsensual sex acts. But when Katherine came to Barbara later on in life and started telling her about her partners and how they were repeating the patterns that Kenneth had, Barbara would allegedly tell her, "Put up with it and stop complaining." Katherine would later claim that she had been sexually assaulted by various members of her family up until the age of 11. On a side note, I can't imagine just what that does to the mental state of a child that young to have to go through that much trauma. Throughout Katherine's life, she had been involved in a series of relationships. She married David Kellett in 1974, however, David would receive some very chilling advice from Barbara on their wedding day. Barbara reportedly told David, "You better watch this one or she'll fucking kill you. Stir her up the wrong way or do the wrong thing and you're fucked. Don't ever think of playing up on her. She'll fucking kill you." The point was later emphasized that David was also told by Barbara in that same conversation that Katherine has got something loose. She's got a screw loose somewhere. David would realize the extent of this warning that very night. After engaging in sex multiple times, Katherine began to strangle him. David had fallen asleep after having sex 3 times, but Katherine wanted to keep going. So there were some telltale signs that she was not okay, and even her own mother knew this early on. Katherine would continue to get into a series of relationships that would turn violent, and they would inevitably break up. This brings us to her final relationship with John Price. Katherine and John began seeing each other while Katherine was still engaged in a long-term relationship with John Chillingworth. Like her mother before her, Katherine was having an affair. John had 3 children from a previous marriage, and although he was made aware of Katherine's violent past, he allowed her to move in 1995. And apart from the usual kind of relationship squabbles that you have here and there, everything seemed pretty harmonious. John was supporting them all with a good salary by working in the mines. All 3 of the children absolutely adored Katherine, so things were looking good. However, in 1998, cracks started to appear in the relationship. Katherine and John were fighting because John had refused to marry her. So in retaliation to that, she videotaped items that John had allegedly stolen from work and sent a copy of that videotape to his boss in an attempt to get him fired. And she succeeded in that. He did get fired. Fed up with Katherine at this point, John kicked her out of the house, which I'm gonna say is very justified. I mean, if my partner was trying to get me fired from my job, I'd be pissed. I mean, who does that to their own fucking partner? Although they reconciled a few months later, but John would still not allow her to move back into the house as they restarted their relationship. And sadly, this is where the story takes a very dark turn. I want to warn people that the details of this crime are quite gruesome. So for context, Katherine had worked throughout her entire life at an abattoir. And for those of you that don't know what that is, it's basically a slaughterhouse where they bring in all of the animals to be slaughtered and then carved up to be prepared to be served as food. So needless to say, Katherine was very skilled with handling knives. In February of 2000, she stabbed John in the chest. He survived this horrific assault, but immediately filed for a restraining order against Katherine. He knew at this point that she was incredibly unstable and felt like something was going to happen to him. He allegedly told his co-workers the day that he took the restraining order out that if I don't come to work tomorrow, it's because Katherine has killed me. Despite his fears, John returned home, worried that Katherine would retaliate by going after his children. But when he returned home, he found that Katherine had sent all of his children to sleepovers at different friends' houses, but Katherine was nowhere to be seen in the house. Understandably creeped out, John spent the evening at the neighbor's house having drinks, having dinner, and then reportedly went home at 11 PM to go to bed. The police reports indicate that Katherine arrived at the house later that night, watched a little bit of TV, had a shower, and then actually woke John up so that they could have sex. Which they did. After they had sex, John went back to sleep. The next day, John did not show up for work. Concerned by what he had said the day before, his boss sent a few of his colleagues over to the house to see what was going on. After finding blood on the front door, his colleagues called the police. Police broke into the house and reportedly found parts of John's body with 37 stab wounds. And Katherine was in a state of complete comatose after ingesting a dangerous amount of pills in a suicide attempt. Now, the next details I'm going to share of the murder are very chilling at all, so if you're sensitive, this is your warning, okay? It's going to get a little bit dark and a little bit gruesome from here on, so that's your warning. Katherine had reportedly skinned John's body and hung the skin from a hook in the house, had decapitated his body and cooked part of his body, serving it up with potatoes, carrots, pumpkin and gravy, and placed multiple plates on the dining table with each of his children's names written on a piece of paper in front of each of the plates. She was going to serve his body to his children. Another plate was found tossed in the back lawn, which investigators believe was a plate that Katherine had prepared for herself, but couldn't bring herself to actually eat John's meat. Needless to say, Katherine was taken to the hospital, but regained consciousness and was put in immediate custody for the murder of John Price. Initially in the trial, Katherine and her attorney tried to put forth an offer to plead guilty to manslaughter, but the judge refused that claim straight away, saying that the overwhelming evidence in the case was too great for them to be able to do that. Due to the nature of the case, Judge Barry O'Keefe gave the 60 jury members the option to opt out of the case due to the horrific photo evidence they were going to be shown. 5 of those jurors accepted that offer. On the 2nd of March 2001, Katherine Knight was charged with murdering John Price, and due to the lack of remorse shown throughout the trial, the judge pushed for the most severe punishment possible and imprisoned her to life in jail without parole. Not only that, he actually ordered that on her paperwork, a note be put on there that says definitely never to be released, making Katherine Knight the first woman in Australian history for this to be imposed on. Katherine is still imprisoned to this day at the Silverwater Women's Correctional Centre, which is a maximum security prison in New South Wales. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Behind the Crime. I hope you found it fascinating, and I hope you'll stick around to see what I'm gonna do next with this series. I'll see you in the next one.